Hello, everyone. Dave here, and I want to tell you all a story, a little story. It's not about a man named Jed who went out hunting for some food and struck oil. No, this is not the Beverly Hillbillies. This is a story about a kid named Dave. When I was 5 years old, I was set on fire by my daddy at a family barbecue in Tennessee. Not just anywhere in Tennessee, this was in Cottage Grove, smallest town in the entire state. Located 145 miles northeast of Memphis, smack dab in the middle of nowhere. It has a population of 66. Here's an old Southern joke. What are the famous last words of a redneck? Hey, y'all, watch this. Now, my daddy Ralph, he liked to knock back a few tall boys on a Saturday, and a Sunday, and a Monday, and a Tuesday. His favorite brand was Falstaff. You can't buy it anymore. It was originally founded in the late 1800s in St. Louis by a man named Papa John Greasy Dick. Now, that has nothing to do with this story. It's just, well, I like saying the name Papa John Greasy Dick. Because I'm still 14 inside. Don't let the old crusty exterior fool you. Still a kid on the inside. So one Saturday, Ralph, he decides that he wants to throw some meat on the grill. And also show me and my sister, Rose, how to build fire. So he gets a little mound of coals going on the grill. Gets it lit, gets it smoldering. Then he calls us over by the grill. He opens up a brand new can of Kingsford Surefire charcoal lighter fluid, points it at the coals. He says, hey, y'all, watch this. And he just blasts it. Whereupon some inevitable laws of chemistry and physics kicked in, and the whole damn thing just blew up right in his hand. Now, my sister Rose, who was standing just a couple of feet on my side, she didn't get touched. And my daddy, who was holding the can, he got a little blister on his thumb. Well, I wound up like my hero Johnny Cash. I fell into a burning ring of fire. And it does, in fact, burn, burn, burn. Now, obviously, this was just a traumatic, horrific, life-threatening accident. But let's face it, it's also quite possibly the most redneck fucking thing that ever happened to anybody. It covers all the redneck bases. Got your alcohol, got a fire, got a flammable liquid, got a trip to the emergency room. Boom. Home run. Now, we lived too far out in the sticks to wait for an ambulance, so I was bundled in the car and taken to the nearest hospital in Paris, Tennessee. This is an inappropriately named town, if there ever was one, and anybody who's ever been there could attest to that. I was there when I was at the hospital. I was examined by the chief surgeon, Dr. Joe Mobley. After the examination, Dr. Joe went out and told my parents he delivered them some grim news. Well, it's not good. He's in bad shape. It's about 50-50. Now, if he makes it through tonight, he'll probably live, but I gotta warn y'all, he's gonna be blind and brain damaged. Well, you were only half right, Dr. Joe. I can clearly see. I'm not going to go on and on about the next few months in the hospital. They were, they were awful. Full of all kind of procedures, skin grafts, and so forth. And, the worst thing that happened is when they would change the bandages and clean the wounds. They would take the bandages off, get a sponge with some kind of antiseptic on it, and just be like, that's hellish. That's a hellish experience. The important thing is that I survived, but, I almost didn't. And I know that because I had a near death experience. When my consciousness floated out of my body and I was able to rise up into the air and I could see myself lying there in the bed, I could also see my mama, Geraldine, and a nurse, and they were doing something, and they were doing something very specific. They were taping newspapers onto a window. The window separated my room, which was in the intensive care unit, from the adjoining room. And the reason they were doing that was because somebody had left one of those really bright examining lights on in the other room. And it was shining right on my bed and right on me. The nurse couldn't get into that room. She couldn't get the access. She couldn't find the key. So she and my mama did the best thing they could, which was just to try to cover up the light. Now, we didn't talk about this for many, many years when I was growing up. We were that typical Southern family that said, well, if we just repress these awful memories, they'll just go away. So it was decades before I actually discussed this with my mama. And one time when I was on a visit up there, I was living in Texas and I went back to Tennessee. And we were out taking a walk. And I decided to talk to her about this because I had started having these memories. Started remembering what I had just told you. And when I told her that, I thought she was going to faint. She just stopped. I remember exactly where we are down on the road when I told her this, and she just stopped. And she looked at me like, what the hell? She said, well, you couldn't have remembered that. You were totally unconscious. You were sedated. You were knocked out. You were in shock. You were only 5 years old. You couldn't possibly have remembered all that. And then she admitted that I did, in fact, have it all completely accurate. And not only that, but there were some other things I remembered. See, I remember that we, on the way to the hospital, they had called ahead to the hospital and said, we've got an emergency. We're bringing our kid up there. He's had an accident. And we were intercepted when we got into Paris by a police officer who took me and my mama in his car and instructed my dad to follow him. We're going to run through all the red lights and we're going to go to the hospital as soon as possible. That officer in that car had the same last name that we did. His last name was Kendall. He was a black man. There were a lot of black Kendalls around. Actually, there was more black Kendalls than white Kendalls. In my homeroom in high school, there were 5 kids named Kendall, and I was the only white one. We all got along great. When we would meet out in the hall in school, we would all call each other cuz. Hey, cuz. What's up, cuz? How's it going, cuz? Man, that used to just flip the redneck boys out. But we had a great time with it. I remember that. And I remember, my mama asking him, he's going to be all right, isn't he? Isn't he going to be all right? And him looking at me and looking at her going, yes, ma'am. Yeah, he's going to be fine. And I could tell he did not believe that. But he was trying to say that to make my mama feel better. And I appreciate that, Officer Kendall. Here's some other things I remember. I remember that I did not want to go back into this reality. I was up there in the ceiling, hovering up there somewhere around the drywall, looking at myself and going, that's a world of misery. I don't want to go there. I'm out. I want to bounce. I'm ready to boogie on into the afterlife. But something stopped me. Something kept me from passing on to the afterlife, which was just right up here. I could feel it. Just couldn't get to it. It's kind of like this. Imagine you're standing outside the hottest rave in Berlin. Inside, the DJ's cooking. People are reveling in carnal abandon, tripping on mollies. Rolling on mollies, I should say. Music's thumping, like unk, 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 and you can hear it right through the walls. Doorman won't let you pass. Even though inside there's a woman waiting. She's wearing a tiger striped spandex bodysuit, jet black hair, mask, stilettos. You know, her name's like Natasha. She's basically a James Bond villain. She got a little riding crop that she don't mind using on you if you're late to the rave. You've been a bad boy. The doorman's like, 9. So I had to come back. Had to come back here. Why? Well, that's a good question, and I'll be honest with you, I didn't think about it all that much until recently. I started wondering, well, was there some reason that I had to come back? Is there something I got to do, some mission to fulfill, something like that? Or was it just another meaningless, random accident in a vast, uncaring universe? Viktor Frankl, the author of Man's Search for Meaning, wrote the following. What is to give light must endure burning. I love that. I really do. What is to give light must endure burning. Put that on my tombstone, y'all. I really would like to spread light on this subject. Life, death, the afterlife. It's all a great mystery. And I would love to tell you what it's all about. But that'd be a lie. Because I don't know, and nobody knows. I know what I experienced, though. And that's something. It was enough to make me question things. Frankly, what I have at this point are just more questions. Who are we? Where do we come from? What the fuck are we doing? Where are we going? What happens when it's over? That's the biggie. What happens when it's over? And is it ever really over? Of course I have questions. We have a very materialistic narrative in this modern scientific age about things like this. It's, well, you're born, you live, you die, boom, that's it, done, game over. Maybe, but I'm not so sure about that. And why wouldn't I be, considering what I've seen, experienced? Yeah, it's only natural that I would question that mainstream narrative, that very narrow, materialistic mainstream narrative. I don't want to leave you with just a bunch of questions, though. Even though I don't have the definitive truth bomb to drop on you, I'm not some shaman who has the ultimate truth about it all. I'm just a guy questioning reality. I know this much. I don't want to leave you empty-handed, so I'll leave you with this. Here's what I think. I think that the universe, the Creator, God, the Tao, the Force, the Source, the ultimate ground of being, whatever you want to call that, that's doing all of this, I think it's doing the same thing it's always done and always will do. It's just calling us over by the fire and it says, hey y'all, watch this. Thanks for listening.